Welcome to Politics by Faith, the American Renaissance. I'm so excited for this hour together. Thank you so much for being here. One of my goals in life is, in the role I want to play in directing this conservative movement, whatever role I can play, is to focus the conservative movement on the good, the beautiful, and the true. Not just tax policy, not reconciliation bills, not just immigration policy. All good, all important, we're going to do it. But I want to make sure the conservative movement is also focused on things that are deeper and more eternal. And that is the good, the beautiful, and the true. All the rest will then fall into place. I believe in my whole life, we have all been living under these three pseudo-intellectual ideas that have taken a hold of our culture, and I think they've gotten inside of people's minds and souls and hearts. I call it the secular trinity, just because I think that sounds cool. And that is three things. First, who are you to say? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and my truth. When we abandoned the good, the beautiful, and the true, the left replaced it. And whether we abandoned it or they took it, we can argue. But either way, the left replaced it. They replaced it with good? Who are you to say? Beauty? Nah, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Whatever I think is beautiful is, and whatever I think, that's it. Just whatever I think. And truth? No. As Pilate said, what is truth? There's only my truth. And we've gotten to the point where most people in America, intentionally or not, live with this demoralizing worldview. And conservatives need to counter this. Really, first and foremost, need to counter this by championing the good, that's morality, the beautiful, there's objective beauty, and the true. There is truth. Truth exists. Now, I think conservatives are doing a good job with the first and the last, right? So they understand the importance of truth, understand the importance of morality, and that's good. But I think conservatives have the most ground to gain, myself included, to fully understand the importance of beauty. And I don't know if it's sounds lame or sounds like a girl thing, I don't know, but it's super important. And it's manly, it's masculine, and it's Christian, and it's American. I love this line from Jeremy Wayne Tate. He said, modern man is in a terrible predicament. He is helplessly enamored with the beauty of what the old world built. It despises the beliefs that inspired them to build it. No one can look at that picture right there and say that's not beautiful, of course. Let me give you another one. This is a cathedral in Paris. This cathedral here, this next one, was built 800 years ago. Look at that. I mean, like what? Could we even build something like that if we wanted to? Yeah, I'm worried that we've lost the will, but we've lost the skill along the way as well. This is the chapel at King's College in England. This was built in the year 1500. Look at that thing. Who built that? Incredible men. But we don't have to go to Europe. We don't have to go to Europe for this. Right now in America, we build slop. Boring, cheap, replaceable, forgettable. But we didn't used to. My go-to example is the old Boston City Hall. Look at this. Look at this beautiful building. Built in 1865. Praise God, it's still standing. But it's not the City Hall anymore. That building right there, that's a stunner. No one can look at that and say that you don't like. That's a beautiful building. You would walk by that and stop. You would take a picture in front of it with that in the background. That was built by people who cared, by people who knew they were building for a country that mattered and for people they loved. Here's the current Boston City Hall. No one's taken a picture in front of that. The people who built that said, look at that open space. That's very pro-democracy. It's pro-people, right? It'll invite people to congregate, but of course it doesn't. In reality, it repels people. And it's true because the people who built that and all that stuff like that, they actually hate people. They hate beauty. They hate God, is the truth of it. You know, my podcast, we talk a lot about this. I have a podcast called Politics by Faith, and we talk about the news of the day and the big story of the day, and then we run it through a biblical filter and talk about the biblical truth. And there's nothing new under the sun, so all this stuff is actually in the Bible. And one of the themes of this podcast is that God is a God of order. And all ugliness and chaos in the name of art and like that Boston City Hall that we have today. If you question that, you're like, that's ugly. They come back, well, who are you to say? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And what even is truth? But we know it. We know it deep down. And this has been true for a while now, and all across our country. Do a search on your computer today. Do a search. Old, and then your town, high school. So like the original high school in your town. And see what it looked like. See what it looked like. I did this for San Diego when I lived there. That's the old San Diego high school. Look at that thing. Unbelievable. They tore it down. They replaced it with this. Do it for your town. You'll see the difference. Same with schools, hospitals. Look up old hospital, current hospital, and the name of your town. Tucker Carlson made the point that you judge a society by its fruit. Jesus said a similar thing, right? Matthew 7:15, every good tree bears fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree can't bear good fruit. That's about going to heaven, but it's literally true too, right? We do it with trees. If someone says this is an apple tree, and you plant it, and then it produces an orange, they were wrong. So let's look at the fruit of what the progressive worldview has given us. The fruit in the world of art and architecture and music and pop culture, it is ugly. Noble ideologies produce beauty. Poisonous ideologies produce ugliness. We are surrounded by ugliness because we have been led by poisonous ideologies. And I will know that we have properly ushered in a conservative revolution and a conservative movement in this country, an American Renaissance. I will know when that happens, when we again start building beautiful buildings and beautiful art and beautiful music. We've lived under a poisonous ideology for a long time, and it's produced nothing but ugliness around us. My concern is we become numb to it. And then when someone like me comes along and says, hey, like, that's really ugly, we should build beautiful things, it's like, you're a pansy or something. I don't know what like the conservative, old school conservative reaction to this conversation would be, but it matters. And I'll tell you, when you realize how ugly everything is around us, from how we build our houses to what our skyscrapers look like, once you see it, you'll get really angry. And I'm sorry about that. Like, my wife has to hear about this all the time when we drive everywhere. It's like, man, what were they doing? Why would they do that? It's so ugly. But you got to get angry in order to make the change that we see. Beauty is objectively true. It's true. You don't have to be Japanese to know that this pagoda in Japan is beautiful. Right? It's like, look at that. Like, well, that's unbelievable. Like, it's because it matches nature. It's made with the materials that are around it. It's culturally unique to Japan, as opposed to the buildings they build today, which are like glass and steel skyscrapers that could be anywhere. That could be in Qatar. It could be in Saudi Arabia. It could be in England. It could be anywhere in America. It could be anywhere. You don't even know. You know that's Japan. It's symmetrical. It's proportioned right. It's beautiful. Tucker did an interview with Russell Brand, and Russell Brand made the point that the buildings we used to build were once, especially the government buildings, were an expression of a contract between the people and their government and an expression of their relationship. And that makes sense because ugly buildings today are built by people who hate God and hate their people. And that's where we're living right now, and I don't want to keep doing that. These people who have built these buildings, they did it to demoralize you. That's what it is. And even just look at the last 10 years, it's come to quite a head. Where you have people tearing down beautiful statues. I could point to many examples. I'm going to point to this one right here, the statue of Teddy Roosevelt outside the New York City Natural History Museum. That's a beautiful sculpture, obviously. They took it down. And in Times Square, they just put up this. This is a 12-foot tall statue of an obese black woman. Not even a particular obese black woman, like one who did something, just generic obese black woman. These are made by people who hate this country, and they've removed all beauty and goodness and truth from our society, and they've replaced it with ugliness for ugliness' sake. And you know why they put that statue up there? They put that statue there to humiliate you. It's to humiliate you. Because what are you going to do? I'm going to put this thing in Times Square, and what are you going to do about it? demoralizing and humiliating. Just like all propaganda, that's what the point of propaganda is. The point of propaganda is to humiliate you, right? If they can lie to you and you go along with it, like transgenderism is like the most obvious example, right? If they can convince you or tell you, they don't convince people. If they tell you that a man can become a woman and you go with that, then there's nothing they can't tell you. But like they own you. And if they can demoralize your soul so much to make these ugly things that we become numb to it, then they can feed you uglier and uglier ideas as well. We need an awakening. We need an awakening in this country and a renaissance of the good, the true, and the beautiful. And as conservatives, we need to take this space back and demand beautiful things again. And ideally, and this is one of my missions as a father of 4 children, is to raise a generation to not only have the will, but also the skill to build beautiful things again. We have 2 wonderful guests. One dedicated to fixing the mistakes in New York, in DC in particular, and then Andrew Klaver to talk about the importance of beauty and why this matters and why this should be a part of the conservative movement. And then we'll end up with some scripture mostly focused on Isaiah 1. It's coming up next right here on the First TV. Welcome back to our special Politics by Faith, the American Renaissance. I want to go to Justin Shubo, who has been fighting for this for a long time now. He's the president of the National Civic Art Society. Justin, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Why does all this matter? Why does beauty matter? What's the point? Who cares? Let's just throw up a building and be done with it already.
Well, I mean, this is a deep philosophical question, and there are many different kinds of beauty: natural beauty, man-made beauty. And I think what we're talking about today is man-made beauty. What does our environment look like? What do our buildings look like? When we go walk down the street, do we feel uplifted, inspired? Do we feel like this is a world that is designed for beings like us? Beauty can boost our mood. It can do so many things for us. And unfortunately, there's been a falling away in beauty in a lot of architecture, especially in our federal buildings. But it is absolutely something that we need to care about. I mean, as the philosophers used to say, what are the 3 highest values? The true, the beautiful, and the good. It is imperative that we build beautiful things.
Maybe we can do a rough timeline of this. We played some, in the first segment, we played some, showed some pictures of things that we built 1,000 years ago that were stunningly beautiful. And they're still beautiful today. And it doesn't matter where you're from, you look at it, it's objectively beautiful. We all know that. And not only the big giant things we built, but even the smaller, the towns, the neighborhoods that we built used to be, and there was an eye on beauty. When did we lose that in America? Let's start there. When did that fall away and why?
Well, I would say that prior to World War II, buildings in America, they might not all be beautiful, but they were at least pleasing. They were not ugly. They were not demoralizing. But after World War II, there was a huge change that occurred in large part due to modernist architects who had left Europe for the United States. They established themselves at Harvard's Graduate School of Design, and from there, this plague of modernism spread throughout the country. Now you have to understand, well, what is modernism? It represented a complete break with the historic architecture. It eliminated all ornament. It eliminated many kinds of visual things that we found beautiful, and replace it with minimalism, with functionalism, with the ethos of the machine, the ethos of mass production. And after that, we started getting this drab uniformity across many of our cities. And this also infected our federal buildings. As I was saying, I mean, we ultimately got a style of architecture called brutalism, which is aptly named. It's a style made up of raw concrete, extreme repetition of modular pieces, deep set buildings that actually are threatening or could even be sinister at their worst. And they were an attempt to be quote unquote truthful, in the sense of not just being truthful to the materials, but showing the harshness of life. It was a kind of anti beauty.
Okay, so my side question of that, and my mom and I always joked that whenever we toured colleges, you could always tell just driving through what the art and architecture building was, because it was always the ugliest building on campus. So it's one thing for this movement to enter into Harvard and all these other schools, but when and why did American people accept it? Right? Like why did we allow these people to put this blight in our cities, and we just sat back and let it do it over and over and over again? And I think we still do now. I want to get to the ultimate end of the timeline, or at least to the present, where there's starting to be a revival of being aware of this. But how do we go for so long just allowing people to do this to our natural landscape?
Well, I think in part, various titans of industry or political leaders, they wanted to be seen as progressive. This is a new technological society. This is the post-world world. We don't build like our ancestors. We don't do any of that. I mean, bourgeois stuff. In fact, I would say some of them, I mean, or many people did have an aversion to the new modernist architecture, but they were afraid to speak up. They might have intuitions about why they don't like that they don't like these buildings, but they had a hard time articulating them. So yes, there was this widespread movement to overturn the past, to build in a new style. It was a kind of self-conscious modernity. But what people fail to realize is that you can be quote unquote modern while still building beautiful, while still respecting the past and building in historical styles. So it is a sad story, since many of the architects, if you listen to them, openly disdained beauty. So, for instance, there's a notorious brutalist city hall in Boston built in the 1960s. When a leading architect, Philip Johnson, saw it, he said, "I love it. It's so ugly." So it's not as if necessarily there is a debate about, are these buildings beautiful or not? But in some cases, the question is, what criteria actually matter in our architecture? Does it matter whether something is beautiful, or are there other criteria that we should be using? The strikingness of the form, the honesty of the materials, the functionalist design. And modernist architects so often prefer those other criteria as opposed to what they consider to be old-fashioned and bourgeois, namely beauty.
And it just doesn't make sense to me. I was in DC recently, and you just walk along the mall, and everyone's taking pictures at the Washington Memorial and the Lincoln Monument, or vice versa. Everyone's taking pictures there. Everyone's taking pictures at the Capitol building. Everyone's taking pictures at the Natural History Museum. No one's taking pictures out front of the African American History Museum. It's blight. It's right next to our Washington Monument. It's blight. Like, will these things ever be torn down? Can we start fresh, or are we stuck with this stuff for a long time?
Oh, well, the brutalist FBI building is going to definitely be torn down. That building was completed in the 1970s. It's an austere concrete pile. I like to call it the Ministry of Fear. When it opened, J. Edgar Hoover said it was like something from Mars. And these mid-century buildings are aging so badly that if you do the cost estimate, it can be cheaper to tear them down and rebuild. Another important building that I hope is on the chopping block is the Department of Energy headquarters. It's called the Forrestal Building, just south of the Smithsonian Castle, from the National Mall, if you can picture that. It's this 20-acre behemoth super block of a building, extremely ugly. Nobody likes it, and it is blocking the National Mall from the southwest area of the city, just completely cutting it off, symbolically. And I'm hoping that that building will be torn down during this administration, and it could be the
Nice.
site, for instance, of two new Smithsonian museums that are on the way. Instead of cramming them onto the National Mall, and removing that building could free up the entire development of the Southwest.
What new Smithsonian museums do they want to open?
The Smithsonian is going to be build a women's history museum and a museum of the American Latino. So those museums are
Interesting.
definitely happening. The Smithsonian has said they want to put them on the mall. One of them close to the Washington Monument as the African American Museum is, and the other
Oh
museum
wow.
on the tidal basin. Both of these museums on those sites would just demolish important public space, block sight lines, and
Yes.
really the National Mall should be considered a completed work of art. And if we
Hmm.
start developing the National Mall southward from the Smithsonian Castle, it could free up tons of space for new monuments and memorials, for new mixed use buildings. I mean, there are very few federal workers in these buildings. And another notorious building in that neighborhood is the headquarters of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. Um, Three different HUD secretaries have said that building is like 10 floors of basement, both Democrats and Republicans. And the current HUD secretary recently said that the agency is going to be moving from the building. So there is an incredible opportunity also to tear down another ugly behemoth brutalist building that's
That's
really
great. I
hindering
love it.
Washington's
And
development.
we got to go. We got to go here now. I want to talk to you on my radio show another day about what we should do with the new football stadium that they want to build. I've seen the modern renderings of what they potentially could build there, and it'd be another massive piece of blight and a missed opportunity for something truly beautiful in a wonderful way. But let me just wrap up with this. Again, why does this all matter? And the other question is, what can people do in their local community? If they don't live in D.C., I'm glad you're doing all this great work on our nation's capital, and we should. But what can people do on a local level in this effort?
Well, first, I mean, beauty matters not just for everyday buildings, but especially for our civic and public buildings, since these buildings ought to reflect who we are and who we wish to be. They are the embodiment of our values. But across the country, people need to show up at, zoning board meetings, historic preservation meetings, to advocate to local governments that they build beautifully and are not afraid to build in traditional styles. People have to be confident in their intuitions about their buildings and don't be intimidated
Mm.
by the architects.
That's great. Be confident of your intuition. That's really good. Justin Shubo, please become a member. Learn more about the National Civic Art Society. Justin, keep up the wonderful work. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
The great Andrew Klavan coming up next, right here on the First TV. Spread the word. Welcome back. Politics by Faith, the American Renaissance. An honor to talk to Spencer Klavan's dad. We love Spencer. But listen, when Spencer's on, we say Andrew Klavan's son. So I don't know what's more impressive or more important, but Andrew Klavan is here, author of the new book, The Kingdom of Cain, Finding God in the Literature of Darkness. Mr. Klavan, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How you doing?
Really good to talk to you. So we're talking about beauty today. Why does it matter? Why should beauty be a part of the conservative movement and the American Renaissance?
I can't tell you how often I'm asked this question, especially because I write fiction, and people will say, conservatives specifically will say, "Why should I read a novel? It's not true." And it's like asking the question, why should you take a walk? Why should you fall in love? Why should you smell a flower? It's like that is what life is about. I mean, politics is there to make those things possible. Your life is not supposed to be about politics. It's not supposed to be about even your work. It's supposed to be about the experience of living, and that experience is enhanced. Not only is it enhanced by beauty, but beauty is the center of that experience. I mean, I think it is what we're all looking for, what we search for, what we turn to God for, as well as to other people. And so the question kind of answers itself, although apparently not to conservatives.
What happens to one's soul or day-to-day life if they have a deficiency of beauty?
I think that if you have a deficiency of beauty, you're disconnected actually from the things that matter. I think if you are living a life in which beauty is not somehow at the core of it, you're living a misguided life. A lot of people think that religion, for instance, faith is a question of a bunch of rules, and if you follow the rules, maybe you'll get a pat on the head and you'll get to go to heaven. But I don't believe that's true at all. I believe that your relationship with God is a way of forming your soul into what it's supposed to be, forming your spirit into what it's supposed to be. And a sign of that formation is that you appreciate the beauty of the world and the beauty of every moment. You wouldn't want eternal life if life itself weren't beautiful. And I think that to miss that, to have that absent in your life, is to have something dark and crippled inside you that you really should be working on, working to fix.
My whole life, I never learned about beauty, never talked about beauty. It was never emphasized or appreciated. So I feel like I'm numb to it. I don't even know what to look for. Right? What does it look like? What should I be on the lookout for? What is beauty?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to get rid of is the idea that beauty is prettiness. I mean, the poet John Keats said, "Beauty is truth, truth, beauty." And while that's a kind of mysterious statement because there is such a thing as truth and there is another thing called beauty, what I think Keats was trying to get at is the fact that when you experience beauty, you're in the presence of a higher truth. Look, if you have faith at all, what you really believe is that this world that we're in, this flesh that we're in, this body that we're in, these experiences that we're having, make reference to something higher than themselves. If I give a beggar bread, that makes reference to a good. If I hurt a child for my own amusement, that references to an evil that goes beyond the actual actions. When I find something in myself that is true and beautiful, I realize that I have found something beyond just this hand, this flesh, this body. And so when you say, what does it look like? I think that is something that you have to train yourself to know. And I think one of the primary ways you can train yourself to know that is by studying the arts and experiencing the arts and taking time out in your life for the arts. Nature is another way. But I think that the arts even train you how to look at nature. When you see a movie that you love, when you read a book that you love, when you even stand in front of a painting and it moves you, I think that is a way of training your soul to understand beauty when you see it in real life.
So I think we've been trained to not do that with the old question, or the new, I don't know how old or new it is. Who are you to say? So Andrew, like, who are you to say that that's beautiful? I don't think it is. Oh. And then like the conversation ends. What do we do with that?
Well, I think that then what you're dealing with is a level of stupidity you might not be able to get around. There's an old expression, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And what that means is that something is not beautiful until you look at it. But it does not mean that one person's beauty is another person's ugliness. There is a difference between the Sistine Chapel ceiling and a garbage can. And if you can't tell that difference, then you should start to learn. You should start to ask yourself, why is it people file into the Sistine Chapel to look in awe at Michelangelo's work, and they don't file in to an alley to look at a garbage can? There is something there. And look, within that context, within the context of the beautiful, sure, you may like, a Shakespeare play, and I might like a Charles Dickens novel. There are things that are according to taste, but beauty does in fact make reference to a truth higher than the one we live in. And I think that is not something that is relative or just a matter of opinion.
Okay, so we rebuked this expression, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, earlier. So I've only heard that as like a relativist, dismissive statement, right? Like, oh, who are you to say whatever? But you're telling me like the origins of that statement, or are you reclaiming it to be, no, it means you actually have to look at it. You have to use it. You have to use your eyes to behold it. Then and that is how you can see beauty. Is that what it really means?
No, you're right. I am reclaiming it, but I'm reclaiming it because
Okay.
we've lost the meaning of the word subjective. We think if something is subjective, that means that it's just a matter of opinion, or that it's not real, or that it's relative because you might see one thing or I might see another. What the term subjective means is that you experience it internally. So to say something is subjective is not at all to say that it is not real.
The people who make ugly buildings, do they do it on purpose these days? Let's focus on maybe like buildings in America. Like, are they doing it on purpose? Are they doing it out of ignorance? Are they doing it just because it's cheap and I got to get the building up, man? Who cares? There's a new apartment complex they're building here down the street from me. I live in the same town as your son, and it's like, I knew it was going to be an ugly apartment building. I just knew it, and they built it, and it's horrible. It's like, why'd you guys do that? Do you have any reason? How do you explain that?
Well, I think people get caught up in ideology. I mean, I think that Solzhenitsyn said that ideology is the way that people convince themselves that good is evil and evil is good. And I think that the ideology really, for the last, I would say like 80 years, has been not just an atheistic ideology, but it has been an anti-God ideology, an actual anger at God, a fight that people are having with God. And that fight consists in one way, and this is a part of the conclusion of my book, The Kingdom of Cain. It consists in trying to destroy the beautiful, in trying to erase the beautiful. And the reason is that once you've truly experienced beauty, you cannot for a moment think that there is no God. And this is a really interesting idea. I mean, I was one of the things that inspired the end of The Kingdom of Cain is I was flying in a plane and looking at a plane of clouds under the full moon. And I thought to myself, this was here before anybody was capable of flying in a plane and seeing it. It was just there waiting for an eye to claim it as beautiful. You know, the best example I can give you of this is a rainbow. A rainbow is an actual thing that's happening in the outside world. It's refracted light, but it only becomes a rainbow when you see it. And so when you see it, it becomes the beautiful thing that we see. Now, if you look at refracted light and you see a Mack truck or you see a rag doll, something's wrong with you. You're demented. You're deluded. But if you see the rainbow, you will appreciate that beauty. It is only yours to see. It's not there outside of the human eye. But once the human eye claims it, it becomes a subjective experience. All of life is a subjective experience. That's one of the latest discoveries of science. Matter itself is a subjective experience as we experience it. But that doesn't make it relative. That doesn't mean that it's not real. And so I think what happens is people have convinced themselves that our experience, once you lose touch with God, you begin to doubt your own experience. And people have convinced themselves that our experience can be anything we want it to be, that we can tape a banana to a wall and call it a work of art. It's simply not true. You tape a banana up to the wall, you have a banana taped to the wall. You have to know how to make a work of art. You have to learn how to do it, and you have to learn how to recognize it as well.
That's right. I got one more question that I want to ask you about the book. How would you recommend, I have 4 little kids, how would you recommend I teach them about beauty? And we can all do that so we can raise a new generation of people who get it.
I think you teach them about beauty by first bringing them into nature, because where is more beauty than in nature? The beauty is natural. We all recognize it when we see it. Nobody looks at a rose and thinks, "Oh my, I got to get rid of that." You know, nobody looks at a sunset and thinks, "What a waste of time this is." So nature, I think, is the first thing, and too many children are completely cut off from nature. But then I think that introducing them to stories that they love, I mean, that is the thing children immediately spark to, is the stories that they love. I remember telling my daughter when she was very little one of the Greek myths, and just this absolute silence when I finished the story, and then her little voice coming down to me from her bunk bed saying, "That's a great story." A little child recognizes the greats right away. And so I think introducing your child to stories, to pictures, and to nature is a wonderful way to teach them about the things that matter.
Great. The book, The Kingdom of Cain, Finding God in the Literature of Darkness. Man, darkness. Who wants that, Andrew? I'm trying to avoid that in my life. What good can come from spending time in that world, in that realm?
Yeah, well, one thing is I've gotten a little bit tired of the idea that if I have faith in Jesus Christ, which I do, it's the center of my life, that I've become fragile and somehow that I can be polluted by seeing stories that tell me about reality. The fact is, one of the things that artists do is to turn the darkness of the world into something beautiful. So if you see the play Macbeth, you're seeing all this murder, betrayal, lies, ambition, all the horrible things that have come out of the human heart, and yet the play itself is very beautiful. And to me, that hints at something that God is doing with our world, because a lot of people look at the world and say, there's so much evil in it, how can you believe in God? But I think the answer to that is there's so much beauty in it, even in the midst of this evil, how can you not believe in God?
So good. The Kingdom of Cain, can't wait to read it. Finding God in the Literature of Darkness by the great Andrew Klavan. Mr. Klavan, great to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much for your ministry.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. We'll wrap up next with our Politics by Faith segment. We'll go to Isaiah next, right here on the First TV. Spread the word. Welcome back to our special Politics by Faith, the American Renaissance. Thank you for being here. It means a lot. If you've made it through, if you care about this topic, we're together, we're united. This is such an important part of the American Renaissance and of the conservative movement. Let's do the Politics by Faith portion of this, where we bring in the Bible, we thump the Bible. That's what we do on my podcast, Politics by Faith. You can listen to it anywhere you listen to podcasts. We take the news of the day, run it through the Bible, thump that Bible, and learn from the wisdom of God's word is all. Beautiful art is a reflection of God. Cultures that are close to God produce beautiful art and value beauty around them. If you're disconnected from the divine and from the eternal, then you won't make beautiful art. You won't care. And in fact, you'll embrace ugliness and promote ugliness, and you'll do ugly things. The Bible's full of the most depraved acts that you could ever imagine from people who strayed away from God. But it's all connected. Roger Scruton wrote a lot about art and beauty. Among many quotes I could have shared here, he said, beauty matters, period. It's not just a subjective thing, but a universal need of human beings. If we ignore this need, we find ourselves in a spiritual desert, similar to what Andrew was saying a moment ago. He argued that beauty was once seen as a manifestation of the sacred, and that the pursuit of beauty and art was a way of reaching for the divine. Now, here's how I think about it. Here's why I think this matters, and here's the biblical truth in this. God is a God of order, and beauty has order to it. It has symmetry. It has proportion. When you see an ugly house, it's because it's all over the place. It doesn't make any sense. There's no order to it. It's chaos. There's a great blog, it's been around for a while, it's called McMansion Hell. And her argument is that the best home architecture, and we should demand more out of the homes we build. The best home architecture, and this could be, like this is about McMansions, so the size of the house doesn't really matter. But the reason why McMansions are so ugly is because they're totally out of scale, they don't make sense, they use materials that don't match, that don't have a sense of style. So let's do a quick side by side. So this is a picture of two mansions in Greenwich, Connecticut. Okay, they're huge, but again, the house could be half the size, it could be a quarter the size, it doesn't matter. The quaintness, size of the house doesn't make any difference at all. It's all about proportion, symmetry, beautiful materials. I mean, look at that. That is objectively beautiful. Move past the size of it. The size, you know, like, I wish I lived there. Don't worry about the size. Just look at the beauty. Look at what it did to your soul, in your eyes. When you first saw it, you're like, yes, that's beautiful. Guys, you got the second one up here? Another, oh no, that's the ugly one. I thought we had another beautiful one. Don't worry about it. You got the idea. Look at that thing. Okay, that's the beautiful one. Now go to the ugly one. Why is this house ugly? This one's in Syosset. Why is it ugly? It's not symmetrical. The proportions don't make sense. The roof lines are all over the place. Different materials that don't make any sense. The windows are all over the place. Different size windows, different kinds of windows. It just hurts the eyes. It just hurts. Like, what is that? What is going on here? I don't get it. And your soul doesn't get it. Your brain doesn't get it because it's chaos. It's chaos versus order is what I'm getting here. God is a God of order. And even architecture of houses reflect God's beauty and design. And we should demand better out of home builders. We should all be like Thomas Jefferson, amateur architects, and demand that our houses look more beautiful. Also, beautiful things are made to last. I'm reading this great book. I'm just about to finish it up. It's by Eric Sloan. He has a bunch of books. This one is all 4 books together. It's just called America. But in particular, American Barns and Covered Bridges is one of these books. It's such a fun book. And he talks about farms and American farmers, he's a painter by trade. So here's some of these. Look, this is a perfect example. Look at these barns. They're stunning. They're stunningly beautiful. They're symmetrical. They match the materials. They match the landscape. They're so beautiful. These old barns. He's a great painter. And he wrote these books. So he said of our early American farmers, and all of our early Americans were farmers, he said the greatest satisfaction that our farmers felt was from not just in the job well done on the farm, which they got every day. They saw the fruit of their labor every day, and there's a satisfaction that comes from that. But the greatest satisfaction came from the farmer's awareness of his part in fashioning a nation to come. The fact that a farmer equipped his home with far heavier foundations than were necessary. That the farmer built his barn to last for centuries, laid a rail fence that would survive 10 generations, built stone walls that are now a part of the permanent part of our landscape. When I drive to church, it's about 30-minute drive. We drive, this is a long way, we drive these rolling hills, and there's these stone walls that have been there for hundreds of years. None of this is done today. We don't even really think about doing it. There was an old explorer, his name was Isaac Weld of Dublin, and he came to America, kind of like a de Tocqueville type guy, came to America to check out what's going on here. And he said of American farmers, he said, these people are so certain of their future that they spend a lifetime building barns for future generations. Those barns that still exist from hundreds of years ago. All of this reflects God's order. And by the way, what are you going to call those American farmers? A bunch of pansies? Oh, you care about beauty? Oh, were you a loser? I mean, these are like the best of us were the first American farmers. But where there once was chaos, now there's order. That's the creation story. It's all about separating and creating order. Dark, night, water, and sky, plants, animals, humans. Adam names the animals. Right? It's all order. One of the most pivotal things in the beginning of my faith was learning about the finely tuned universe. Everything in our universe has to be exactly as it is, perfectly finely tuned, from the rotation of the earth, the distance from the sun, the size of the sun, the heat from the sun, the distance of other planets, gravitational forces, the percentage of oxygen versus other gases we have in our atmosphere, the gravitational force, the magnetic field of Earth. If the gravitational force was less, we'd float off into the space. If it was too hard, we wouldn't be able to move, like nothing would work. The atoms, the way the atoms work together, like everything has to be perfectly in order, perfectly finely tuned. And if any one thing was off, then none of this would be possible. To me, that speaks to a creator, and it speaks to order. And the scientists forever have known this. Like Isaac Newton, we've mentioned this many times before, he's the greatest scientist of all time, but he spent way more time as a theologian. And he knew that everything he was doing in the realm of science was to discover more about God's creation and to understand what God was doing, a God of order. And you look at artists like Michelangelo, they sought to reflect his order. There is not a single person, unless you are completely deceived and your soul has been completely destroyed by the modern culture of today, and I pity you if that's the case. No one can look at these two works of art. Let's start with Pieta by Michelangelo. I think this is the greatest work of art of all time. I would make the argument, look at that, it's stunning. Absolutely stunning. Are you kidding me? How is that possible? Like, what in the world? You can't look at that and then compare it with a Jackson Pollock. That you're not, they're nowhere near each other in any way. And I don't even want to hear it. Don't even pretend. Okay. I can just see there's like some art history major, like, well, what? It's like, get out of here. Okay. And my entire life, I've been inundated with Jackson Pollocks everywhere. If you go to DC, there's beautiful Smithsonian buildings, as we were talking about, built by people who cared and loved America. And now they have, the building's still there, but they have modern art blight placed outside. They'll put like a giant blue rooster for no reason, just to uglify. I shouldn't say for no reason, it's to uglify them. There's Jackson Pollocks everywhere when it comes to music, everything, even the family. And I'll end here. Our friend, Rob Henderson, he looked at some studies that determined the strongest predictor of sexual behavior at a young age was due to the unpredictable environments that a child lived through in the first 5 years of their life. If a child grows up in unpredictable, rapidly changing environments early in life, then it doesn't go well for the rest of their life. Like order is the most important thing in a child's life. It's not poverty. So the point of these studies from Rob Henderson, it's not that being poor is not great, but it's living in chaos. That's the actual problem. And chaos can exist among poor and wealthy families. So it's not the money, it's the chaos versus order. It's true for families. And we've had a culture that has pushed chaos from every angle on us, and we still do on our kids. I love the scripture, Isaiah 1:18, come now, let us reason together. I love that. It is madness to reject and resist a God of infinite wisdom, love, grace, and power, and infinite beauty. Let us reason together. My goal is to encourage conservatives to make beauty a major part of our culture and of our conservative movement and of the American Renaissance. Let us reason together, and let's make America beautiful again. Slater Radio on Twitter and Instagram. Again, my podcast, Politics by Faith. Please join us over there every day. First TV.